In this episode of the Encounter Report, 3 swordsmen demon-fanged their way to world regeneration. There's Axelrod, your humble narrator who had a second-plus playthrough on the PlayStation 3, Landale, who was playing the game blind on the PlayStation 3, and Shane Is Games, who was playing the game for the first time on PC. Each of us played the game on normal difficulty, and with all that said, it's time to beg the Chosen to teach us Double Demon Fang. Battle type starts us off, and there's immediately a number of stats that stick out. Firstly, Landale joined the 1000 Encounters Club straight out the gate. Is it prestige or pain? Only club members know. Interestingly enough though, despite having nearly 300 less encounters, Shane Is Games edges out Landale on total time spent in random encounters, and that's a curious development for sure. On the total death percentage side, which is where all the deaths are distributed, we all have a number of deaths for optional encounters. This distribution can most likely be attributed to the Sword Dancer, but as we can see with death percent, or how many of those encounters ended up with deaths, there's probably more to it than that. Moving over to battle locations, we look at the spread of where the encounters took place. Immediately, we can see that dungeon encounters make up the large majority of the time spent in encounters, where it took 69% or more in encounter time. In Landale's case on world map encounters, his numbers are higher than Shane Is Games and myself combined. This was largely due to his interest in exploration. He explored every spot he could travel to, and when he found a treasure chest in a forest, he was convinced more treasure chests could be hiding in other forests. This endeavor left him with a lot of worthless items in my eyes, but he did come across an Aldivide, so there was an upside. For Shane Is Games, his time was less brief in the two worlds. In Silverant, we can see that while his encounter amount is on the low end, he spent the longest amount of time in those encounters, which is also true for Tetheala. Part of this was due to his encounters having more time spent in them, as he spent an average of 1 minute 3 seconds for Silverant and 53 seconds for Tetheala in those encounters. In comparison, Landale was at 39 seconds for both worlds, and I had 46 seconds for Silverant and 45 seconds for Tetheala. And as a note, the Silverant and Tetheala encounters encompass all encounters for those regions, excluding places like the Tower of Salvation, Daris Karlon, Welgaia, and Mythos' castle. Additionally, these numbers are very isolated from the locations above them. Another addition here was character deaths, which were how many party members died in battle. On the combat types department, we can see how all the encounters concluded. Earlier, I had mentioned that there was probably more to the death distribution, and here is where we can get some insight on that. For myself, my deaths were to monster chests, the Sword Dancer, Kratos in the Tower of Salvation, and Kuchinawa. Landale also had a similar distribution, but instead of 1 death with Kuchinawa, he had 14. Among all of us, he was the only one to be victorious against the Red Ninja, so props to you. Shane Is Games also had deaths in very similar areas, as both he and Landale were taken by surprise with the boss in Thoda Geyser. He also had 2 deaths against Kuchinawa and 7 deaths in the Colosseum. The most interesting death is an unwinnable fight against Yggdrasil in Tetheala's portion of the game. Turns out, you have to survive until the encounter fades out, and if you don't, you die. I never knew. Also, Shane Is Games was the only person to beat Kratos in this Tower of Salvation. Props to you too. We're zooming past subtypes since you can't ambush fights in Tales of Symphonia, and of all the grinding done, I was the only one to not do it, and for what was done, it was very little. I hope everyone has a microscope because party composition is next, and I'm squeezing in every character on here. For final level, Tales of Symphonia sadly doesn't make it easy to see the levels of characters not in the active party, so those were the only ones I felt confident showing. We could all reasonably extrapolate the backup characters were within 1 to 3 levels though. Probably. And to close us out, here are the final combined stats. I admit, I went into this thinking that this would be a 40-hour playthrough for everyone, and how wrong I was. There's definitely more side content in the game, to the point where I actually had to restart the game because I sort of activated hard mode sequencing. It's also not every encounter report where someone like Landale can have the highest total encounters and highest VOD time, but not have the highest encounter time. Then again, Shane Is Games was playing the PC version of the game, and there were numerous instances of the game freezing for multiple seconds in combat, so perhaps that played a larger role than I thought. And that's everything we got for the Tales of Symphonia Encounter Report. I hope you visit everyone's channels and social media to praise them for all this wonderful data. With another report done, I think we can leave the world in good hands. It's not like we're going to leave it in the hands of a lime after all. for watching, appreciate it, see you on the next video.